Hey guys, it's Dr. J here. Welcome to our live Q&A session on Friday. Hope everyone's having a phenomenal day. Let's hit it. What's on your all's mind today? We're taking questions on Facebook as well, so feel free and mention whatever you like in the chat. What's on your mind? What's happening in the functional medicine health world today? So last couple times we chatted, we talked about Sibo, we talked about thyroid issues, we talked about nutritional deficiencies. What else is on your mind? What do you want to chat about here? Awesome. So I'll let the viewers kind of come in here over the next few minutes and pop in some questions. So off the bat, let's talk about digestion. Let's talk about diet and digestion. So off the bat, like the goal of any diet is to, number one, provide nutritional density, right? The goal is also to make it anti-inflammatory, not have all the refined bad fats, not have all the refined vegetable oils, and also to be low in toxins, right? If we have really good healthy food, but it's got covered with pesticides, that's not good. And we want to make sure that those foods that we're eating, we can actually digest and break it down. Any food that we can't break down is going to be a stressor on our body, stressor on our gut. Think about going to Whole Foods. If you buy a whole bunch of really good groceries at Whole Foods and you leave it on the countertop and it literally rots and goes bad, what good is that? So think of good digestion dovetails with nutritional density. Most people think, oh, I'm going to eat really good, but then they don't break the food down well. So I want people to think about eating good food, but also digesting your food as well. All right, we got a whole bunch of questions here chiming in. Let's dig in. Let's see what we got, guys. Awesome. Thanks, Rosalie. Man with the map. I was diagnosed with hyperuricemia. That's high levels of uric acid. I get gout attacks very sparingly. Now that I've incorporated more meat through my AIP approach, should I be concerned with more uric acid buildup? So great question. Typically, you're going to have excess uric acid primarily through elevations in fructose. So I typically am not worried about increased meats from uric acid because most uric acid issues are going to be from carbohydrates, alcohol, and excess fructose. But keep an eye on it. You can measure the levels and see how you do. I've had lots of people with previous gout issues make these dietary approaches, and a lot of their gout pains have gotten better. Matt White writes in, Dr. J, I've recently come down with a massive amount of stressors in my life the past week with travel, work, etc. I'm trying to figure out a balance between lowering stress with adaptogens, but still having energy. Any tips? So it sounds like, but still having energy or no energy. So if you're doing good, I mean, adaptogens are going to be helpful. Of course, prioritizing sleep at night. You may need an extra hour or two of sleep on top of what you normally get to help recover and kind of get your body back into an anabolic state. Number three, I imagine nutritional density is going to be really good. I imagine that, you're probably already adding in some additional B vitamins and mitochondrial nutrients. I mean, that would be a great starting point. So number one, good sleep. Number two, make sure nutritional density is super high. Number three, add in appropriate adaptogens. So ashwagandha or ginseng or rhodiola or eleuthero are great. If you're having a hard time winding down, extra magnesium and extra GABA will help your body shut down so you can kind of get into that parasympathetic repair and relaxed state. And then, of course, if you need to tap into a 3 to 5 minute meditation session in the morning and the end of the day, that could be a great way as well. And then one thing is just during the day, really make sure you're breathing through your nose. The olfactory nerves up in the sinus area really stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. So I would just say really make sure you're activating the parasympathetics as a great way of getting your body into recovery mode. Dylan writes in, what's your favorite way to test for heavy metals and favorite way to treat someone if they are toxic? Well, heavy metals, I like doing a urinary test, and we do a challenge with DMPS, 2,3-dimer proponic acid. It's going to be a compound that's going to help kind of bind and chelate out the metals. It gives us a better window into tissue burden. Like some people like Chris Shade, they look at all three. Blood's only going to be good for acute heavy metal exposure. Hair, not so good. There's studies with autistic children where they had lower amounts of metals in their hair because pushing metals through the hair requires detoxification pathways working optimally. So if your detox pathways aren't working optimally, you may not see the metals in your hair. And of course, the challenge tests are nice because I've done pre and post, meaning where we did no challenge and then did a challenge, and we see a significant amount of more metals coming out. So that's telling me that the metals need to be really chelated out with the DMPS or DMSA or EDTA as well. Thanks a lot, Reese. Appreciate the comments. Healthy coach, if you don't feel like that you're that bad on dairy, good dairy, grass-fed, is it okay to have? I think just do a really good elimination for a few weeks. Start with adding back in ghee first. Ghee tends to be more clarified, so there's less casein and lactose in it. If you do good with ghee, then start adding back in good quality grass-fed butter. Most people can handle ghee and grass-fed butter because the casein and lactose content's very low. And then from there, you could start adding in maybe a little bit of yogurt or raw milk after. But start with those first because of the decrease in lactose content and casein content. Sandra writes, hey, Dr. J, I would love to see you and Dr. Ken Berry together on a podcast. Love it. Well, let's, I think Dr. Ken's already reached out to me, so let's make that happen for sure. I meant to add raw dairy, grass-fed. Yep, totally healthy, coach. I get what you're saying. Addie writes in, what should I look for when buying a good probiotic? Well, I think number one, you want to buy from a good brand. Number two, it depends what your goals are and kind of what your issues are. If you have a lot of histamine issues, they want to do a spore or soil-based probiotic. If your gut's in or if you don't have a lot of histamine or a real sensitivity to probiotics or fermented foods, just a really good Lactobacillus bifidobacter probiotic is going to be great. Mine is called ProBioFlora. It's a Lactobacillus bifidobacter base with some phage in it. I'm a big fan of that one, obviously. Then with the Matt writes in, what's your opinion on moderate marijuana and or THC and CBD oils? Are they okay to use when you have an autoimmune disease and follow AIP? I think it depends. So I think CBD has some really good benefits for modulating the immune system for chronic pain. It's non-psychoactive. So the benefit of that is you're not going to get high from it. So I like that because it's not going to, affect memory. It's not going to make you kind of lazy. It's not going to give you the munchies, so to speak, and it's not going to mess up or create any psychoactive issues. So I like the CBD for some of the autoimmune stuff, for the pain stuff. THC has some interesting things with nausea and pain as well. You just got to be careful because it's got the THC is going to make you high a bit, and it's going to potentially affect memory and mood and motivation. So CBD, I lean to more, and THC I think could be good. It just has to be in the right, used for the right things. Pain, nausea, those kind of things. I think try CBD before you try THC. Try to do it in the oil form because you get a lot of the polyaromatic hydrocarbons and the heterocyclic amines from the incineration of like smoking it in the joint, so to speak. Amy writes in, happy Friday, Dr. J. Thank you. What would you do to treat Candida overgrowth with die-off rash/welts? I tried tea tree oil with coconut oil. Any other suggestions? So if you already have welts on your skin, number one, I would make sure you're adding in some activated charcoal if you're doing some clearing with the gut. Throw in some ginger tea as well to really keep the lymphatic system moving. You can always do some whole body vibration or some rebonding to help. Number two, I would say if you started a clearing program and as you ramped up, you started seeing a lot of these kind of rashes and welts, I would back off on the killing if the killing is what exacerbated it. And number three, I would use a really good antifungal soap. There's a couple of brands out there. ART Naturals or Purely Northwest or a couple that are good. And that way you can start hitting the infection from the outside too. But I would do that first before you did anything else. You could always do a little bit of oil of oregano or tea tree oil or melaleuca mixed with a little bit of MCT so it doesn't burn, and you can rub that on the skin too. Addie writes in, any brand suggestions for good probiotics? Well, in my line, we use ProBioFlora. That's kind of the Lactobacillus bifidobacter one. I also like Megaspore. Those are my two favorite. There's also Prescript Assist. There's Primal Defense Ultra. Those are some good ones there. Matt White writes in, thanks a lot. If you're under stress, still okay, or good to do licorice root, DHEA, and Preg, or that just increase the stress response? I think it depends, right? If you're under stress and your cortisol is low, licorice root's going to be helpful. If you're under stress and your cortisol is already high, that may push it a little bit over the top, right? So I would say if you're taking it and you feel, anxious or more jittery, then maybe your cortisol's on the higher side. Again, we wouldn't know for sure unless we had some testing, but you could use your symptoms as a pretty good gauge. And I think DHEA and Preg would help because it would provide a little bit of the building blocks to make some of those stress hormones. So I think it's okay. Just pregnenolone's a double-edged sword because it's throwing gasoline on the fire. So if you're doing a lot of bad stress management and eating bad, you can throw gasoline on the fire. But if you're doing well with those things, I think it can be really powerful. Spivey writes in, Dr. J, how you doing today? I'm doing great. Thanks. Hopefully you'll be going water skiing here in a bit in Austin. Charlie writes in, should you take ProBioFlora while killing H. pylori or just Sacroflora? It depends. With H. pylori, there's some good research on Saccharomyces being very helpful to kill H. pylori. If the person has a lot of gut inflammation, sometimes we'll add the probiotics to the third phase, which is the repairing phase, because it can have some natural anti-inflammatory reduction qualities. So it really depends on the individual. Rosalie writes in here, Dr. J, can you say anything about having calcium supplements for menopause? Even if I have good nutrition and balanced meals, is it really necessary to have a supplement? Well, I mean, I think If you're in menopause, you should just be on a really good quality multi-support, and there will be a couple 100 mg of a good calcium dimalate, just something really, on the lower side, but just chelated and bound, so you're going to have really good nutrient support in the background. But I wouldn't be on calcium really by themselves unless you've looked and see your diet's super low in calcium, but a good multi should be enough. You can always run your diet through chronometer just to make sure you are getting enough calcium as well. I think you want about 1 to 1.2 grams a day. What are the different ways to increase my pH? Baking soda with maple syrup makes me nauseous. So if you were talking about increasing your pH, going from 7 to 8, so you're talking about making your pH more alkaline, I mean, I wouldn't worry about that. So it depends what you're talking about, because the blood has a pretty tight pH range of 7.25 to 7.35. And if you go outside of that, you can create lots of issues. So your blood's going to be pretty tightly regulated. Maybe you're referring to urine, or maybe you're referring to saliva. I mean, your body has buffering systems where it uses bicarbonate. Inflammation is one of the biggest things that will bring your pH more acid. Grains will bring your pH more acid because they're inflammatory and they have a pH 10 times lower than meats, because the logarithmic scale for pH is in increments of 10. So a pH of, for instance, 5 is actually 10 times more acidic than 6, for instance. It's not just a one-for-one thing. So keep that in the back of your head. So my biggest thing is eat good vegetables and have some meats, have some healthy fats. Don't worry about the acids in meats. Do lots of vegetables and just keep the inflammation down. That will really help the pH. Let me check a couple questions here on Facebook. Jonathan writes in, what's the best way to get clean water? Do you recommend reverse osmosis or something like a Berkey system? It depends. If you're on a budget, the Berkey system is good. If you're not on a budget, get a whole house. I have a whole house and a reverse osmosis countertop, so I have it twice. But I also have a mineral supplement right by the filter that I'll add back in. So I make sure that even though my water is maybe devoid of minerals, I'm adding some back in just to ensure that I get those minerals. Steve writes in, hey, Steve, Saccharomyces aggravated me, LOL. Okay, so if you have issues with the Saccharomyces, number one, did you taper it up slowly? Number two, are you adding in other probiotics along with it? How do other probiotics respond? Is there a histamine issue? If you can give me a little bit more info on why or how that aggravated with you, then I can give you a little more feedback on what you can do. Thomas writes in, I had crypto, a new stool test says, but I don't, but now I'm kind of anxious with headaches. Hold on, it's moving a little bit here for me. Anxious with headaches and all of a sudden allergic to almonds. Can you help? So if you came back with crypto, that's a parasitic infection, Cryptosporidium. We definitely have to address that because that's going to create inflammation in your gut. That's going to make it harder to digest food. So we have to make sure we're going through the 6 R's. So most people what happens is they found out they have an infection and they freak out and they go right to step 4, which is the remove step, removing the infection step. That's the wrong thing to do. Step 1 is you remove the bad foods because you have to, number 1, decrease inflammation from the foods. 2, we have to replace enzymes and acids so we can break down the foods better. We also want to make sure we're chewing our foods well. Really important. If we're eating good foods and we have HCl and enzymes and we're just taking a bite or two and then just swallowing it whole, that's not going to allow the enzymes and the HCl to work as well. Number 3, we're working on repairing the gut lining, working on repairing the adrenals and the hormone systems so we can regulate inflammation better and generate energy. The more the inflammation's under control, the more we're going to help heal and seal that gut lining. The 4th R is where we remove the infections. Most people do that first because it's a natural kind of freak out thing, right? Think about it. Like, let's say you found out you had an STD. What's the first thing you're going to do? Antibiotics, right? Get rid of it. I want it gone. People have that same kind of mindset with gut issues, but we don't want to compare apples to apples like that. So keep that in mind when we deal with the 6 R's. 5th R, repopulate probiotics. 6th R, retest. Hope that helps. Let me see here, guys. Any other questions? What mineral product do you use to add back into your filtered water? So you can just do high quality real salt. I'll also play around with new salt as well, which is a potassium-based salt. And then there's also a couple of trace mineral products, one called Light Show and one called Endure. Those are some good trace mineral products. For athletes, how do you suggest to control acidosis and inflammation from chronic high effort training? Well, I mean, I say number 1 is make sure your diet's really good. Number 2, make sure your recovery is good, meaning you have enough sleep and downtime. Make sure you're exercising according to what you can handle. So if you're feeling tired after your workouts, If you're feeling like you can't repeat the workout, if you're feeling like the next day you cannot do it again, or you're feeling hit by a bus, you're probably overtraining. You're probably not getting enough sleep and recovery. Branched chain amino acids, creatine, carnitine, CoQ10 are all going to help with energy production, ATP, free-form aminos, and of course, the BCAAs will help with the muscle recovery. I think that's a really good first step. And then just really keep, lots of green veggies. These are all good alkaline things. Keep the inflammation down, especially from the grains, and I think you'll be in really good shape. All right, I'm going to head back over here to YouTube now. Any questions on Facebook? Keep them rolling. All right, let me see where I'm at here, guys. Wing writes in, Dr. J, good morning. My 2-year-old's breath stinks. I brush him twice a day with coconut oil, peppermint oil, and lemon oil. Does it sound like a digestion issue? Yes, totally. I mean, most people's gut stink because there's food rotting in their stomach. So if they're 2 years old, I would get like an enzyme wafer product and just start with a simple enzyme wafer and see how they do. And if they do well with that, then maybe you want to add in a little bit of apple cider vinegar or some lemon juice 5 minutes before a meal. So that's kind of how I would start first. Start with an enzyme wafer, then add a little bit of acidity in there and see how they do. And then you can monitor how their breath smells after. Reese writes in, top exercise tips for supplements that can help you through a depressive state. I lost my mom in January and I can't push through at this time. I'm really sorry to hear that. I know that's always tough. So, I mean, right now, I would say make sure you gauge your exercise according to what you can handle. Make sure you're feeling energized. Make sure you can emotionally repeat it. Make sure the next day you don't feel like you're hit by a bus. Utilize the branched chain amino acids. Utilize creatine. You can do an alkaline creatine or a crealkaline that's buffered. And I would say all the mitochondrial nutrients I just mentioned earlier, that's a good first start. Let me keep on rolling here, guys. I lost my place. Hold on. Lisa writes in 2 years, I've gained 20 pounds while dieting. So I imagine when you say dieting, that means like a low calorie kind of diet. I'm postmenopausal. I take 4 grains of nature through a day. That's a high amount of nature through. That's like the amount that someone would be on if they didn't have a thyroid, if they had a thyroidectomy and have gut issues. Do you think that the TSH test should control your dosage of medication? I think TSH is good to look at. I mean, in a perfect world, we like to get our TSH down to 0.5 to 1, but some people, their T3 doesn't go to an optimal place. So it's a combination of looking at TSH and T3 free and total together. So it's a combination of the two. But if you're still having issues and you have gut issues and you're not breaking down your food well, we got to look at the gut too. Some people that have a lot of gut issues, I recommend chewing up their thyroid hormone, letting it dissolve in their mouth, and then swallowing it 1 to 2 minutes later, just to make sure there's not an absorptive issue. Spivey writes in, is keto/fasting rash caused by histamine coming out or pores in the skin? Hard to say. There could be a die-off reaction that's causing that keto rash where you're now shifting all your fuel sources from calories versus sugar, and that's killing off some critters. Number 2, there could be an issue with the fact you're not able to break down that fat and protein because of lack of stomach acid and enzymes. Could be one of the two, I think. Addie writes in, I get bloated whenever I eat fermented food. Does this mean I have a histamine sensitivity? Maybe. It could also mean you have Sibo as well. So I would look at histamine foods, and I get a list of low FODMAP foods. Try cutting them out and adding them back in one group at a time and see which one causes you to react more. Let's see here. Dennis writes in, can social anxiety be reversed through functional medicine? Absolutely. If we have blood sugar swings, if we have nutrient deficiencies, if we have poor gut issue, if we have gut bacteria and leaky gut that's creating LPS and that's getting all the way up to the brain, that's going to create a lot more inflammation. So for sure. And that's going to create brain fog and cognitive issues and mood issues. So for sure. Going back up here a little bit, guys. Okay. I think I hit that question. Rebecca writes in, is it safe to take bismuth for long term? As in when I have the bio HPF, it's a really good naturopathic pills. I backed off only dosing on 1 day versus 3 to keep the feeling nauseated. Bio HPF, I don't think has bismuth in it anymore. But like bismuth and Pepto-Bismol, I think for a short period of time is okay. But I like other natural antimicrobials to help with clearing of infections. And if we're looking for soothing stuff, I'm going to lean to like aloe, slippery elm, DGL, L-glutamine, those kinds of things. Should I be using refined coconut oil and virgin olive oils over the regular? It depends. I mean, I like the unrefined coconut oil because I like that kind of coconut oil smell and taste. If you're reacting to it or it's making you bloated, then you may want to go with the refined version that basically has no coconut smell at all. Chris writes in, what are some of the causes of high reverse T3? What is a high number? I would say in the low 20s, like 20, above 20, I would say. I mean, the biggest thing is going to be adrenal stress. So that could be food, that could be blood sugar, that could be emotional stress, that could be sleep. Reverse T3 is your body's way of putting metabolic blanks in the gun to basically down-regulate the receptor site. The receptor site is now full of a hormone called reverse T3 that isn't as active as T3. It's a metabolic blank in the receptor site. So that's your body's way of naturally down-regulating your metabolism, get to whatever these stressors are, increase selenium, which is shown to decrease reverse T3. And you can also support the liver as well, because that can help decrease T3 as well. Like milk thistle or silymarin is great for reversing T3 or for decreasing reverse T3. I have that in my Liver Supreme product. A lot of thyroid conversion happens at the liver. That deadenase enzyme, what happens is what converts T4 to T3, and then you have this upregulation of the 5' deadenase, which then increases reverse T3. So supporting the liver does help, but also supporting the underlying stressors helps too. You're welcome, Rosalie. Let me see here, guys. What are you adding and how much to your water? I just do a pinch. Typically, you shouldn't be able to taste it. In the morning, I'll do a little bit more. In the afternoon, a little bit more. But I'll typically just do a pinch throughout the day. Dennis writes in. Okay, we answered Dennis's question already. Let's see here. Whoa, okay. A lot of questions coming in. My 6-year-old son has struggled with constipation and nothing seems to help. He is on a high dose of probiotic and magnesium every night for the past 2 years. He still has 1 bowel movement a day. Well, if he has 1 bowel movement a day, that's not bad. I mean, I wouldn't really consider that constipation, number one. If he's regular, that's good. If you need a little help, you can always do a little magnesium citrate or magnesium oxide. But of course, I would look at getting to the root issue. Is there an underlying bacterial overgrowth that's causing the bowel and that migrating motor complex to be sluggish? So let's look at the root cause. But in the meantime, every day is pretty good. Probiotics are always a good thing. And you can always use some of the magnesium as a meantime while you get to the root cause. All right, let me go back over here to Facebook here for a sec. Any suggestions for hyperpigmentation, acne scars? I don't get breakouts often, but when I get one, it sticks around for a while with slow healing. So of course, vitamin C serum cream and vitamin A retinol cream is going to be great on the skin. It's going to help with collagen. It's going to help with healing and tissue regeneration. You can also use some laser therapy. There's some really good fractionated lasers that can be used to stimulate the areas where the collagen may need some support. There's also some various like micro needling techniques, some that even use like PRP or protein-rich polypeptides or stem cells that can be helpful too. Those are a couple good methods as well. I'd recommend find a good kind of cosmetic dermatologist and kind of review your options with them. There's a couple of good things that are out for that. In addition, eating vegetables in the diet, how do you feel about powdered green superfood supplements? Also, any brand you suggest for green powdered? I would say I think it's fine. Just make sure it's organic, because if you're eating a whole bunch of vegetables and they're not organic, you'll be concentrating a lot of pesticides. I think it's fine. Mix it in with a good collagen support or a good healthy fat and put it in a smoothie. I think that's a great way to get some extra veggies in there. And for athletes, okay, I think I already answered that question. Let me roll back here to YouTube, guys. Gabe writes in, I'm dealing with malabsorption and infections. I used to weigh 170. Now I'm 130. What's in your line of collagen powder? How many scoops or calories should I get to aim to get back to my normal weight? So number one, if you're 170 pounds, just doing the math here, what's your height? But in general, I would say you should be getting at least 2,500 calories a day. Depends on how much activity you're doing, but at least 2,500 calories a day. You should be eating enough so you feel satiated. I would probably go to 4 meals a day at least, with your weight loss being what it is. And make sure you eat till you're satiated. I'd also look at your gut. I mean, if there's malabsorption, whether it's from low stomach acid or enzymes or infections driving a lot of this, I think you have to make sure you get to the root cause. I mean, with the collagen, I would get at least 40 grams in a day, but your bigger issue outside the collagen is going to be getting enough calories, making sure that all those calories are nutrient dense, making sure there's enough enzymes and hydrochloric acid on board, and then making sure you look for infections. Hope that helps. Do you like oceans alive, phytoplankton? Not sure. Don't have enough info on that one. See, Savvy Sylvester writes in, hey, do you recommend perioral? What do you recommend for perioral dermatitis and keratosis pilaris? Well, number one, make sure the inflammatory foods are out. Maybe you want to try an autoimmune elimination diet to start. And I would look at making sure you have the ability to digest your essential fatty acids. A lot of those things come from poor digestion of fats. Then with the Matt writes in on AIP, I think I'm finding foods I'm reacting to, but the question is there a way to test for antibodies to know more specifically what I'm reacting to? There are a couple of tests out there, like the MRT or the ELISA Act. There's some Cyrex tests as well. Not a huge fan of the food allergy test because when you move away from one food and you go to the other food, let's say strawberries to blueberries, well then now if there's gut issues, you're going to eventually develop antibodies to those. So it's just kind of like a whack-a-mole thing. So I think doing a reintroduction and having a modified rotation with your reintroduction or a modified rotation on your elimination diet, meaning if you're eating meat one day that's beef, maybe chicken the next, or pork or lamb or fish, have a rotation component to what you're doing. And then make sure you have enough enzymes and hydrochloric acid to break those foods down, because food allergies tend to happen when, number one, when you're stressed, when your gut barrier is compromised, and number two, when you're not breaking down the food all the way. Okay, let's keep on rolling here. I'm on AIP. Good, I answered that question. What can you say about kefir? Is it safe to have it? What about contamination? Is it contaminated? I would say kefir, you can do coconut-based kefir. There's also dairy-based kefirs. Typically, the fermentation process can decrease a lot of the lactose and the casein. I would say if you're on an autoimmune kind of elimination diet, I would pull it out. But if it's a coconut kefir, I would say you could definitely do it because there's going to be no dairy in that. But just make sure you do a good reintroduction and you see how you tolerate it. Lisa Henson, I don't have a thyroid. Well, that makes sense. If you're at 4 grains a day on the nature thyroid, that makes sense. I would look at doing it twice a day, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. I would look at chewing it up as well. And I would look at getting your gut looked at to make sure your gut's doing well. What dose of vitamin K2 do you recommend? I'd have to look, but I think it's anywhere between 300 to 500 micrograms is a pretty good dose. Ronan writes in, I've lost 15 pounds in the last year at 140 pounds. Haven't done anything but intermittent fasting 5 days a week with carb loading occasionally. Don't intermittent fast if you're losing that much weight. Lisa writes in, will you be at PaleoFX? Yes, I will be. I'll be there next weekend. Thanks for asking. Also, his bowels are hard pellets and they float. So he's definitely not breaking down fats. Probably low enzymes, probably low HCl and low bile salts. You got to work on all those areas. BioHPF does have bismuth in it. Did you get a bottle a year ago, but did take it? Yeah, it's probably an old one. They changed that formula a year and a half ago. Addie writes in, what kind of test can I take for Sibo? Typically, there's going to be a lactulose. A lactulose breath test will be the one that you will do for Sibo. You'll take a breath sample. Then you'll swallow the lactulose, and then you'll blow into a tube every 20 minutes for 3 hours to measure how the methane and hydrogen gases respond to it. All right, guys, I got a patient here I got to run to. Hope you had a phenomenal day. Any last questions, pop it in there, and I'll hit one more before I go. Anything else, y'all? Let me check YouTube here or Facebook real quick. I think we hit all our questions on YouTube or on Facebook. I think last questions here. I think we're good, guys. Hey, you guys have a phenomenal weekend. I'll be back on Monday. Take care. Bye now.